Hello guys, this is your friend and we are back with a new fanfic. Which is what if Naruto was trained secretly by a mysterious god and fell in love with Hana Part 2. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. Chunin exams in Orochimaru. It was the day before the Chunin exams were to start and Naruto was on his way to his team's meeting spot. He knew they were starting and that Kakashi had waited this long to tell them about the exams because he was simply that lazy. Sora had been granted permission to watch with the Junin sensei. Over the past 2 months, Naruto had actually become a little brighter around the other genins. Sakura and Sasuke still treated him like crap, although Sakura didn't try to hit him anymore. That's probably because he swore to break her arm the next time she tried. He chuckled ferally at that memory. He still had his daily lunks with Hana, which had, surprisingly, led to them napping under a tree more than once. Naruto had a feeling she liked him the same way he liked her but was a little scared to ask. That was just about the only thing that stayed constant over these 2 months. Naruto could now classify as Junin in Taijutsu, amazing what one can do when they are actually taught ne. His strength and speed was about that freaky Rock Lee's level. His elemental manipulation, well, he's done with that. Although it should be noted that Naruto focused on that more than learning the few jutsu Sora taught him. His Fuinjutsu training was going well. He would honestly put himself at about intermediate after getting that sealing book with notes on the side by some guy with the initials MN. He was close to making his sexy jutsu, yaoi version into a seal for Kunoichi. Granted, he had taught it to Anko and Hana per their requests and they would get some of the seals for free. He could dodge all the attacks from Anko, no matter how mad Sora got her, and that was something Naruto was rather curious about. Every day he would arrive for training, Sora had always pissed off Anko, and yet she seemed to smile all through it. She had taken to joining them for dinner this past week and he could honestly say that he enjoyed her company. By now, Naruto had reached the bridge for his meeting. Sakura and Sasuke were already there, but before Sakura could yell at him, Kakashi appeared in a puff of smoke. However, this was highly unusual. It was the correct time for him to be here. His entire team stood in shock and Sakura even tried to dispel a genjutsu. I smiled and said, "Hello team. I have nominated you for the Chunin exams. If you wish to participate then take these forms and sign them, then bring them to room 301 tomorrow at 8 a.m. Ya ne. And dispersed with another poof, and leaving 3 slips of paper. Naruto grabbed a slip, signed his name and said, "Ya ne." Before disappearing in an electric shunshin. Sasuke was brooding about the dobi, knowing Shunshin and Sakura was fawning over the emo bit. I mean Sasuke. Naruto reappeared just outside of town. He sighed and started to wander until it was time for his usual lunch date with Hana. Surprisingly, Kiba had not yet caught onto their interactions. Naruto was personally a little apprehensive for when he found out, mostly due to the fact that Kiba and him used to prank together. He didn't wanna hurt Kiba just to be with Hana, but if that's what had to happen then so be it. Naruto shook his head as he felt a square box following him. "Come out guys. I know you're there," he said. Konohamaru and the now identified Udon and Moegi coughed out the extra smoke and proceeded to do some strange introductive dance that had Naruto's eye twitching. Naruto had met Konohamaru when he tried to attack the Hokage and Naruto had watched as Konohamaru tripped himself and proceeded to blame it all on him. Following that, the closet pervert had showed up and pissed off Naruto with his shortcut to Hokage speech and claiming Naruto was filth. After Naruto had bonked Konohamaru, the kid had taken to calling Naruto boss and trying to get training. Naruto sighed. "That was terrible. You used too much powder, you introduced yourselves, not actually leaving a calling card, and rocks aren't square." They all looked down in disappointment. "Sorry to disappoint you, boss," Konohamaru said. Naruto shook his head. "Raise your heads, guys. Learn from your mistakes. Work harder if you can't get it the first time. You can do anything you set your mind to, if you try hard enough. They all smiled brightly and Konohamaru said, in that case boss, play ninja with us. We will hide and you can seek us out. Naruto smiled brightly, sure kid, I'll give you guys a 30-second head start. 3, yadas, and they were off around the corner. Followed by a loud, oof. And Naruto rushing around the corner to apologize for their actions. As he rounded the corner, Naruto took in 2 sand ninjas. One seemed to be wearing paint and dressed like a cat, while the other was a female with a battle kimono and 4 pigtails. The one with the paint makeup was holding Konohamaru while his 2 friends were on the ground looking scared. Hey kid, don't you know it's rude to bump into someone? Maybe I should teach you a lesson, he said. The woman spoke up, Kankuro, just leave the brat alone. You don't want to be caught if he shows up, right? Kankuro sneered, shut up Tamari. These leaf are weak. He just needs a lesson. He raised his hand to strike Konohamaru, and just like that he was holding a haori in his hand. Naruto set Konohamaru down beside his friends and turned to Kankuro, you know. Chunin exams or not, I'm sure the Hokage wouldn't like you hurting his grandson. Still, try that with one of my friends again. He turned to Kankuro, his eyes turning into slits and flashing gold for a second, I'll kill you. That sent a shiver down both of the nin's spines. The only one who could do that was Gaara. Naruto turned to the tree, you with the bloody sand. Get down here. The sand nin's eyes widened and a gravelly voice echoed from the tree, Kankuro, you are a disgrace to the village and to me. Gaara appeared in a swirl of sand. He turned to Naruto, you are strong. Mother says to be wary of you. He said. Naruto cocked his head to the side, no idea who this mother is, but she's probably right. Bags under the eyes, crazy glint, sand mastery, su ikibi no tanuki. Gaara stared for a few minutes before responding, who are you? Naruto replied, Naruto Uzumaki, and you? Gaara nodded and said, Gaara no Suna. I look forward to seeing you again. With that proclamation, he turned and left, followed quickly by his siblings. If Shukaku was wary of this person, then he had to be strong. Funny how the first ninjas to see him as strong aren't from Konoha. Naruto shook his head and looked at the clock, oh crap. I'm gonna be late. See you later guys. The 3 children waved goodbye to Naruto and proceeded to play ninja by themselves. Top of the monument. 12:02 a.m. Hana was waiting for Naruto. It isn't like him to be late for their meetings. She smiled when she saw him running, more like bolting, up the stairs and breathing hard. Over these past 2 months they had grown close. She could honestly say she liked the blonde-haired ball of energy. Even if he got smarter and calmer after the seal was released, he still went out of his way to make her laugh and feel happy. She was wondering why he hadn't made a more open move on her when it had hit her last night. She remembered their first lunch together and it helped her realize he was either dense or scared. She smirked as he reached the last stretch. She wasn't going to let him stay scared. If she had to drag him into a back room to get him to open up, then by Kami she'd do it. Naruto smiled a million-watt smile and said, Hi Hana-chan. Sorry I'm late. Konohamaru and the gang wanted to play and we ran into some sand ninja. Hana frowned. You're okay, aren't you? They didn't hurt you. Naruto shook his head, nah. I was too good for them. She chuckled. Well, come on then, it's time for lunch. He nodded and took his usual spot. They spent most of lunch just chatting back and forth. After about an hour, Hana needed to get back to the clinic. However, she decided she needed to know something first. It had been on her mind all through lunch. Hey Naruto, Hana asked. She moved her body so she was leaning sideways on her right hand facing him. Her legs in a V shape with her hair falling down behind her arm, and eyed him saucily. Naruto gulped. Damn, she looks sexy. Why yes Hana-chan. Inwardly Hana was chuckling, looks like I already know the answer. Doesn't mean you can't have some fun anyway. Yeah, keep your panties on. Feral sighed groans, what do you think of me? She asked innocently. Naruto, by now, was sweating bullets. Do I tell her? Do I not? What happens if she doesn't like me too? 1,000 of these thoughts raced through his mind before his dragon side gave it a silent push to rest on one. I'll never know if I don't say anything. Naruto swallowed and replied, I think you're beautiful, and smart and talented and kind. I could keep going but I think I'll just settle for Tenchi. Angel. Hana was a little taken aback by what he said but asked, why Tenchi? Naruto simply smiled softly and said, nothing is perfect save for maybe the gods. Angels are the closest to that perfection and they save people from darkness according to Sora. To me, he looked right into her eyes, you're my angel. No one else was kind to me save the old man. You were always there for me even if you didn't know it. That's why I say angel. Hana was nearly crying, she was so happy. She hadn't really meant to do any of those things but she knew he appreciated it. She could see it in his eyes. He really loved her. Of all the things she knew of Naruto, to earn his love was probably the hardest to do. Forgiveness and friendship were easy. Naruto could give that out in spades. But even Sora hadn't wormed his way into Naruto's heart as Hana had. On top of that, she wasn't even trying to do it. She just wanted to be close to him at the time. Naruto was trying to gauge her reaction to that, and when she stayed silent with her mouth slightly open, he was a little worried. That of course faded when he felt something being pressed against his lips. Slowly, he relaxed and returned the kiss rather sloppily. When the need for air broke them apart, they were both blushing crimson. Naruto gulped some air and said, Sue, does that mean what I think it? He was cut off by Hana's lips again. She pulled back, her hand still behind his head, and replied softly, does that answer your question? Naruto smiled softly, yeah, that's a good answer. Hana giggled, good, I have to go, so can you clean this up for me? Naruto nodded. Thank you. Make sure you stop by the Inuzuka clinic before heading to the Chunin exams tomorrow, okay? Naruto nodded again and he kissed her chastely. She walked away after giggling at Naruto's starstruck face. Slowly Naruto's face spread into a shit-eating grin. Ya hhhhhhoo. Needless to say, the whole village heard that yell and Hana blushed crimson as she walked into the clinic. With Sora. Sora was currently sitting in a dango bar with Anko. It seems she really warmed up to him after that first day. She would always ask questions about him or the dragons after evasion training while they watched Naruto do his elemental training. He still remembered that first day almost 5 weeks ago that he asked her on a semi-date. Author Demon Style. Flashback no Jutsu. It was about 11:45 and Sora was bored. Naruto really just needed pointers now to master the style. After helping him for weeks, Naruto's basic agility and ability to learn had allowed Sora to fix the horrible katas originally, and when Naruto had the basics, he shot off like a rocket to space. He sighed. Then, there was that whole business with Anko. He didn't know why he really offered to morph the mark. Heck, it had been spur of the moment. Still, he didn't regret it yet. Anko had walked into the training ground and saw Sora sitting there. Over the past 3 weeks she had gotten to know him better. His favorite color was silver, his favorite food was tacos, he liked to watch the moon, he liked to fly. The list goes on. She hadn't even realized it till today, but she didn't really take offense when he called her hubby Haim, Snake Princess, anymore. For some unknown reason, she found herself wanting to have some company for lunch today. Now, here she was at the training grounds where, conveniently enough, only Sora was present. She stared for a few seconds before turning around and trying to hightail it out before he noticed her. Hey, hubby Haim. She closed her eyes. Too late. She turned around, her eye twitching. What did I tell you about calling me that? Sora just chuckled and rubbed his head in a very Naruto-like manner before replying, not to, but ya know it really suits you. Besides, I thought maybe you'd wanna get a bite to eat. It is close to lunch after all. If Anko had been any less in control of her emotions, she would have let her jaw drop. Did he just read my mind? She asked herself. Of course, if you don't want a free lunch of dangos and red bean paste, then it's your loss. Sora said, heading out of the training grounds. He suddenly found himself pinned to a tree with Anko pressing herself against him. He raised an eyebrow. I'll take it this means a yes. He asked. She simply grabbed his hand and proceeded to drag him across town to a dango bar while muttering something about free dango and silver-haired gods. Sora was simply chuckling. Little did he know that this would become a lunch reminiscent of the lunks Naruto and Hana shared. That meaning it's an everyday thing. Author Angel style. Flashback no Jutsu Kai. Sora chuckled at the memory and observed his training partner, friend, devour her dango with a gusto few could match, let alone beat. So you're the proctor for the second exam, nay? Sora asked. Yeah. Don't ask. I can't give out info. However, make sure Naruto is ready for mind games. I know Ibiki is the first proctor. Anko said. Sora nodded. Thanks. Well, I'll see you tonight. Anko smiled sexily. Why, Sora-kun, I didn't think you'd be so bold. Sora simply smiled back and got right in her face. Only if you want me to be hubby Haim. He replied huskily. This was an ongoing game for them. They would try to one-up the other with innuendos, and it was actually rather fun if Sora admitted it. This particular one, though, had sent shivers down both their spines. Anko simply nodded her head and Sora took off, knowing that she'd be there for dinner. As he ran across the rooftops, though, he remembered the Junin who nominated their teams for the exam. It would be interesting to see all those genin trying to fight Naruto. Author Demon style. Flashback no Jutsu. Sarutobi cleared his throat. Before we get into the nominations, Sora here will be with the senseis throughout the length of the exams. Kakashi stepped up. He was only here on time because the Hokage told him the real meeting was 3 hours earlier. Hokage-sama, he is not a sensei. Why would you allow him the privilege? Sora cut him off. Perhaps you should trust in your leader Hatake-san. He has his reasons, I'm sure. Maybe you should try to see why I am there instead of outright refusing it. Are you not the one to preach? See underneath the underneath. Surprisingly, that shut most of the people up. He did have a point. The Hokage would not allow him in without good reason. Sarutobi spoke up. In any event, would the rookie sensei please present the nominations? Asuma stepped forward. I nominate Team 10 comprised of Ino Yamanaka, Choji Akamichi, and Shikamaru Nara for the Chunin exams. Kurenai stepped forward. I nominate Team 8 comprised of Hinata Hyuga, Kiba Inuzuka, and Shino Aburame for the Chunin exams. Kakashi stepped forward. I nominate Team 7 comprised of Sasuke Uchiha, Sakura Haruno, and Naruto Uzumaki for the Chunin exams. Everyone seemed rather shocked. It had been a very long time since a rookie team was nominated, let alone all three. Uruka stepped forward. Now hold on a minute. These students were under me not even a year ago. How can you proclaim them to be powerful, or for that matter mature enough to be a Chunin? Kakashi looked at Uruka and said, they were your students, now they are ours. Perhaps you should believe what we are telling you. Sora scoffed subtly. Perhaps Shino and Shikamaru are mature enough, Shino may be strong enough, but the rest need serious work. Kiba is too hot-headed, Sasuke is arrogant, Ino and Sakura are still fangirls, Hinata, she needs more confidence, but that is her family's fault. Choji is a wildcard. I honestly don't know enough about him, and Naruto. I won't go into him cause I honestly have no idea what he is fully capable of. Sarutobi smirked, noticing he deftly dodged a description of Naruto. However, if you wish for them to get some real experience with truly trained ninja, this is a good starting ground in a somewhat controlled environment. Most of the Junin seemed impressed with his breakdown, although the senseis were a little miffed at his descriptions but kept their mouths shut for some reason they didn't understand. Hey, you guys don't think they have totally forgotten the tongue lashing he gave them, huh? They remember, although it's a very subconscious thing. Sarutobi nodded his head. Very well then. The Chunin exams will be held 1 week from today. Dismissed. They all nodded and filed out some keeping notice on Sora. Author Angel Style. Flashback no Jutsu Kai. Sora arrived home and fixed dinner, which happened to be a quiet affair before everyone headed off to bed. Tomorrow was a big day. Inazuka compound. 7 p.m. Ka-san, Nei-san, I'm home. Kiba yelled as he walked in. He smelled the air and instantly smiled. Steak and mashed potatoes with gravy, his favorite. Dinner is almost cooked, runt. Get washed up. Hana yelled from the kitchen. Kiba growled at the nickname but let it slide because she was cooking his favorite dinner. He quickly washed up and joined his mom at the dinner table when his sister served them before sitting down and eating herself. They talked about Kiba's training, which was going well until Sum turned the conversation to Hana. So Hana, how have you and that little dragon been getting along? Sum asked with a smirk. Hana blushed lightly and replied hotly, I don't think that's any of your business, mother. Sum smirked wider. Au contraire, my pup, I have a vested interest in whom you date. Kiba exploded. What? Date? Who is this little dragon you're talking about, and where is he so I can make sure he is worthy of my sister? Hana got angry at that. Are you implying I can't choose my own mate, runt? Kiba stuttered for a few seconds before Sum interrupted. Kiba, shut your mouth for a moment. Hana, seriously, how has he been doing? Is he treating you well? Hana sighed. She couldn't lie to her mother when she was actually being caring. It's going well, mom. He's a bit dense, but today we kissed, and although he's sloppy, I could tell he wanted more. She paused and blushed heavily before saying, he called me his tenshi because I paid attention to him. Sum smiled and said, good, he'll make a good mate. Now hurry up and give me blonde-haired grandpups to spoil. Kiba and Hana sweat dropped, not to mention the dogs, who by now had finished their meals and joined their respective owners. Even through the sweat drops, Kiba picked up on something. Blonde-haired. He thought. The only blonde I know who's been around Hana is Naruto, too. Suddenly, in a different part of town, Naruto felt a shiver run down his back. Kiba nearly shot out of his seat. You're dating Naruto? He roared. Hana was a little annoyed and said, sit down, runt. Yes, I'm dating Naruto. What's it to you? Kiba looked like he was going to have a heart attack. Naruto is a dead last and a loser. There's no way he is a worthy mate. Kiba never got to finish that sentence because Hana had already put his face into the floor. You know, I expected better from someone Naruto would call a friend. She said hotly. Mom, I'm going to bed. Tell the hothead, he needs to get to know Naruto before judging him. Sum nodded and noticed Kiba was out cold, with Akamaru whimpering at his plight. She sighed and put him in his room. She'd deal with it tomorrow. Chunin exam start. Inazuka compound, 7:15 a.m. Naruto was walking up to the compound in a very good mood. After all, today was the first day that he could call Hana his girlfriend. For some reason, Sora had made him bring Shiroi, and he had given Naruto a scroll saying, open this if you get into a fight. It'll be of great help. Naruto looked at Shiroi. She was walking beside him rather proudly. Meh. She was about the size of a household cat, but she had sharpened claws and teeth. Don't ask how Naruto knew that. He chuckled as the compound came into view. Hana was waiting for Naruto. She had until 8 to get to the clinic, and she knew he had to show up early for the exams, so he should be here rather soon. Luckily, the street seemed deserted this early in the morning. She smiled seeing him walking up the street with Shiroi by his side. She narrowed her eyes staring at Shiroi. She looked like she had training like the ones her nin dogs went through. Couldn't be. Foxes aren't allied to any clan. Besides, she didn't have that walk or that look about her until today, she thought. She waved at Naruto, who waved back enthusiastically. Naruto picked up his pace and ran up to Hana. He kept right on running, and Hana looked a bit scared. There's no way he's gonna stop in time. Meanwhile, Naruto was inwardly laughing. He grabbed Hana and twirled her in the air by the waist using the twirl to stop himself. Hana laughed freely as she twirled. Naruto was never this bold before, however Hana liked it. As he set her down she giggled again. What was that for? She asked. That. Oh, I just felt like making you laugh so I did. Naruto responded smiling brightly. Hana smiled. All right, but we have to get going soon. I wanted to wish you luck in the exams. Naruto frowned for a second before nodding. Thanks Hana Tenshi. Hana blushed but then smirked devilishly. Hey Naruto, she said. Naruto gulped. He recognized that look. Why yes Tenshi. Hana grabbed his head and snaked an arm around his neck before kissing him deeply. Naruto was ready for that, so he slid a hand behind her neck and one to her tight butt. Hana inwardly smiled, happy that he caught on so fast, and found herself pushed against the bricks of the Inuzuka compound. She slid both her arms around his neck now. Naruto grabbed her and when she moaned slightly stuck his tongue into her mouth, starting a little tongue war. Hana was praising Kami and all the other gods that she caught Naruto. Man, his tongue is doing things I didn't even know were possible. That thought was interrupted rather loudly. Naruto oh 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 oh. Get away from my sister. Kiba roared. He had just walked outside on his way to the academy when he saw Hana making out with Naruto of all people. Now Kiba had remembered the talk from last night, but he dismissed it as a nightmare from bad steak. Seeing this, however, was beyond him. He was pissed. How dare this dead last loser think he can make out with my sister? Hana and Naruto were both officially in a murderous rage. Their first true make-out session was interrupted by Kiba. Even Shiroi had a tick on her head. Kiba, what I do with your sister is no business of yours. Now I suggest you leave before things get ugly. Naruto said. She may not be my mate yet, but no one interrupts my alone time. He thought. Hana on the other hand was thinking, well, we are outside, but still, Runt shouldn't have interrupted us. Kiba was a little intimidated by the key being sent his way but replied nonetheless, you aren't worthy of my sister, Dobi. Get away before I make you get away. Just as Hana was about to respond, everyone froze. Sum had come outside and she looked tired and pissed. Would someone tell me why I am up at 7:30 in the morning when today is my day off? She asked. Naruto and Hana simply pointed at Kiba who, eepsed, and stood shaking. Kiba, what the hell is wrong? Sum asked angrily. Kiba replied, albeit a bit shakily, Hana and Naruto were making out, mom. There's no way Naruto is strong enough to. Sum smacked Kiba upside the head, making him fall silent. Hana and Naruto have been having lunch together every day for the past 2 months, Kiba. 3 months ago, I not only accepted his alpha status but also a status as potential mate for your sister. You should trust your sister's judgment, pup. Sum said wisely. She looked at them all and said, now you are all going to be late if you don't hurry, so get a move on. Needless to say, they all scattered, but not before Hana and Naruto shared a swift kiss for good luck. Naruto and Kiba spent most of the walk in silence. Academy School. 7:50 a.m. Naruto walked up to his teammates who sent him a glare and an annoyed look. You were almost late. Let's hurry before we fail because of you, Baka. Sakura said. Naruto sighed and waved his hand showing he was ready to enter, and they all walked in. After a brief walk up the stairs they came upon a room with what appeared to be, older genin blocking the doorway to the room with 301 at the top. Naruto narrowed his eyes as he saw Lee get put down, must be acting weak to confuse opponents. Besides, that's a genjutsu, we only went up 2 floors. Naruto thought. Sasuke of course had to be a loudmouth show-off, hey, drop the genjutsu and let me pass. I gotta get to the real room. Naruto nearly facepalmed at that. Suddenly Lee was next to Sakura and professing his undying love and protection to her. Naruto simply greeted Lee and Tenten before looking at their teammate Neji Hyuga, who put a stick up his. He thought when he scoffed and turned away. After a brief fight between Lee and Sasuke, they walked into the exams and looked around. Naruto could tell people were sending ki at them to test them. He scoffed silently before flaring his own ki, which was about low Junin, and settling into a corner near the rookie 9. He eyed the competition and noted to stay away from the sand team and that grass nin who eyed Sasuke like a slab of meat. He turned his gaze to his other classmates. Ino and Sakura were fighting, of course. Choji, Shino, and Shikamaru were eyeing the competition. Hinta was trying to hide, and Kiba and Sasuke looked ready to fight. Ma, you shouldn't make so much noise. You see those rain ninja? They are really bloodthirsty. A silver-haired genin said. Guess who, and you get a cyber cookie. Sasuke heffed, but Kiba spoke up. Who are you and why should we listen to you? The silver-haired man chuckled and said, my name is Kabuto. I have plenty of information on the different teams. I've been through these exams 7 times after all. Kiba's sweat dropped. So you suck. Naruto nearly facepalmed. No, he's got a purpose. No one is that crappy to fail 7 times. With all the info, he could be a spy. Sasuke spoke up. If you have info, how about Gaara no Suna and Rock Lee? Kiba added in. Naruto Uzumaki. People were a bit shocked at that but kept quiet. Let's see. Gaara no Suna, 37 D ranks, 13 C ranks and 1 B rank. Impressive for a genin. Teammates are Tamari no Suna and Kankuro no Suna. I don't have much on his skills, but he has never been harmed while on a mission. Incredible. Kabuto said. Most people made a mental note to stay away while Sasuke wasn't it to fight him, and Naruto thought, must be his sand shield. Rock Lee of Konoha, 58 D ranks, and 8 C ranks. Teammates are Neji Hyuga and Tenten Higurashi. His nin and genjustice are non-existent, but his taijutsu is ranked at mid-junin. He was the dead last of the academy. Kabuto said. Sasuke was seething at his defeat. Most were again making notes to avoid him if possible. Kabuto pulled out the last card and charged it with chakra. Before he could read it, however, it was snatched from his hands. Naruto read the card and his eyes narrowed. Some of this information is classified as a secret. No genin has access to that information. So he is a spy. He ripped the card up and everyone else frowned. Deception and secrecy are an integral part of being a ninja. Why would I allow you to give out my secrets? Before he could respond, Ibiki and the proctors showed up at the front of the room. Sit down and shut up, you maggots. Everyone froze. They looked towards Ibiki and he grinned ferally. Come get your seating assignments, and when you are seated I will explain the rules of this test. Everyone quickly filed into their seats and looked readily at Ibiki. Good, now first rule, each person has a total of 10 points. Each question is worth 1 point. There are 9 questions now and the 10th will be asked with 10 minutes left in the exam. You have 1 hour. Teams will share points, so if one person fails, the whole team fails. Everyone got annoyed at that and Naruto felt 2 slight keys directed at him that he shrugged off. Silence. The exam will start as soon as I say so. Oh, anyone caught cheating will have 2 points deducted from their papers. Make us proud and show the skills of a chunin. Begin. Ibiki said. Everyone flipped the papers and Naruto grew confused. These questions are completely out of the range of a genin. Maybe Shikamaru or Sakura could answer a few. But definitely not the old me. Think of the test. 1 point a question, 10 questions total, share points, 2 points for cheating. Wait, if we cheated at the academy it was an automatic failure. If we are caught cheating and showing the skills of a chunin, they want us to cheat. Hehe, I'll bet the last question isn't even a real question. Naruto smirked and looked at Ibiki. What's that kid up to? Anko said he's really good. He thought. That was interrupted by 3 puffs of smoke by Naruto. Everyone seemed surprised and wondered what he would do. Ibiki waved off the examiners that he hadn't cheated yet. That's confusing. He thought. He nearly sweat dropped when the kid pulled out a deck of cards and started to play poker with his clones. He walked up to Naruto. What are you doing? He asked. Without even looking up, Naruto replied, I'm playing poker. What does it look like? Ibiki chuckled. Obviously, but what about the test? Naruto discarded 2 and picked up some more before showing a full house. Meh, I can't answer these, so I'll just hinge it on the last one. Ibiki smiled. He bopped one of the clones and took its place, saying, "Deal me in, kid." The examiner's sweat dropped and marked off more people. Time skip 40 minutes. Good game, kid. Look me up sometime, it'd be cool to play again. Ibiki said, standing up. Okay, cool, we still have 15 minutes, right? Naruto said, dispelling his clones. Ibiki nodded. Naruto smiled and picked up his paper. He walked over to Shikamaru and said, "Trade ya. Your paper for mine, and in return I'll give you the best cloud watching spot in the city." Shikamaru eyed him for a moment before muttering something and switching the papers and filling in Naruto's. Naruto nodded and whispered in Shikamaru's ear. He nodded before putting his head back down. Everyone was stunned until Ibiki started laughing. "Kid, that was brilliant. You knew the test all along, didn't you?" Naruto chuckled. Maybe not. Who knows? Ibiki shook his head. Alright, Mag, it's time for the final question. But there's another rule to it. If you choose to not take the question, you fail here and now. If you choose to take the question but answer incorrectly, you will never be allowed to take the exams again. Everyone erupted in anger and outrage. But there are people who have taken this exam before and are still here today. Random 20-year-old Genin number 1 said. Tough. They didn't have me as a proctor before. Ibiki said. People grumbled before, more and more quit. 78 Genin, huh? Anko will never let me live this down, but no more look like they will quit. Alright, maggots. Those of you who are still here. Pass. Congratulations. Everyone just kind of gaped for a second before Tamari exploded. Passed. What's the last question? Ibiki chuckled. There was no last questioner. To be more specific, the question was to whether or not you were willing to take the last question. For example, as a Chunin squad leader, you are given the mission to infiltrate and get certain information, however you know next to nothing of the target and surrounding area. Do you accept the mission or decline it because it's too dangerous? Naruto spoke up. You aren't giving enough information. Do you trust your team? Is the information important enough to risk the lives of said teammates? Will there be seduction, meaning a woman is more suited to lead? All in all, a good summary, but too little information to make an informed decision. However, some missions must be accepted because they are vital to your village's survival. Ibiki smiled broadly. Well put, Naruto. As he said, you chose to accept the unknown mission, showing you have the confidence necessary to become Chunin. Congratulations once again. Now a giant ball flew through the window and exploded into a banner saying, Anko Mitarashi, second examiner, and single. Oh God, please not her. Naruto groaned and thumped his head into the desk. Hey, who said that? Anko said, appearing in a purple flame. Having a dragon user around helps with abilities, nay. Oh, it's just the dragon Gaki, never mind. Most people sweat dropped. Naruto stood up and started walking JG for the door. Oi. Gaki, where ya going? Anko asked, a little annoyed. If you're the proctor, only one place can hold the second exams. I'll CYA at the usual spot. With that he vanished in a blue lightning shunshin. Anko was a little miffed. 78 Gakis. Oi, Biki-kun, you're getting soft. Ibiki chuckled and shook his head. Nah, we have a good crop and that kid that just walked out is very good. Anko smiled. Alright then, you maggots, meet me at training ground 44 in 5 minutes or you're disqualified. She turned to Ibiki. So he's really that good, huh? Ibiki nodded. Totally bypassed my scare tactics and played poker with me to the point I could barely read him. Anko was impressed. Ibiki was an expert at reading people. To fool him was something even Anko had a hard time doing. Good, well, I'll be going then. She disappeared and Ibiki shook his head as he headed for the Junin sensei room. Junin sensei. 20 minutes before. There was a lot of chatter about the first exam and bets placed on who would pass it and such. The rookie sensei along with Guy and Sora were chatting about the first proctor. Sora knew of Ibiki from Anko, but Kurenai needed an explanation. So do you think your teams will make it through Ibiki? Sora asked innocently. Even though he said it this way, Kakashi and Guy were both rather suspicious. Well, I'm not worried about mine. They are an infiltration and capture team. That runs close to interrogation. Asuma said. My youthful students will not be defeated by this unyouthful test. Guy said. Sora chuckled. I am sure their flames of youth burn brightly with you as their sensei Guy-san. Kakashi nearly dropped his book. Asuma looked like his cigarette was gonna fall and Kurenai just looked plain shocked, while Guy was crying and yelling about flames of youth. All flames of youth are copyrighted by Maida Guy and Rock Lee. Kurenai regained her senses and said, I have a little worry about Hinata, but, with help from her teammates, she should pass just fine. They all looked at Kakashi, who didn't seem to be paying attention. And your team, Hataki-san? Sora asked. Ma, they will do fine, I'm sure. Sasuke was at the top of his class and Sakura was barely beaten by him. He replied. And of Naruto, surely you do not expect Sakura and Sasuke to be able to simply hand Naruto the answers? Sora said. Ma, I'm sure they will help him. They are teammates after all. He said, smiling. Sora narrowed his eyes because he noticed Kakashi was not believing what he said. So the fact that Sasuke has only once helped Naruto, and that was when he did it subconsciously, and that Sakura constantly berates him every day instead of trying to better her teammate, bothers you none? Sora asked, quirking an eyebrow. That threw most of them for a loop. Kakashi taught teamwork above all else. How was their teamwork that bad? Before he could answer, Ibiki walked in. Everyone focused on him as he announced the passing teams. The rookie senseis were happy to see all their teams passed, but Sora was a little curious as to how Naruto did. Kakashi was as well because, now that he thought about it, Sora had a point. Had he been focusing too much on Sasuke because of the council's pressure? How did Team 7 do, Ibiki-san? Kakashi asked. Ibiki chuckled. I dunno what you taught that blonde kid Kakashi, but he saw through my games like he had your fabled Sharingan. The girl figured it out herself and the Uchiha copied with his Sharingan. So how did Naruto pass anyways, Ibiki-san? Sora asked, genuinely curious. By now, the other rookie sensei were gathered and listening intently. He played me in poker for most of the test, then switched papers with the Nara in return for a cloud-gazing spot. Ibiki said, chuckling. The other senseis were stunned. That was quite an unorthodox way to pass the test. I didn't teach him that. Kakashi said rather softly. Sora chuckled. I have a feeling Naruto is going to be surprising you more and more throughout this exam. Somehow the other senseis were agreeing with that statement. Inside the Forest of Death, 5 p.m. After the whole encounter outside of the Forest of Death and Anko's little crazy stunt where Naruto dodged the kunai she threw by pure reflex, they entered the forest with an earth scroll. After about 2 hours, Naruto spoke up and said he needed to use the restroom. He left and came back rather suddenly. Sasuke simply threw a kunai that lodged itself in the man's leg and said, You're not Naruto. He has 3 whisker marks on each cheek, not 2. Plus he calls me Tem every chance he gets. He took the kunai from the mont's leg and knocked him out before they ran off to find Naruto. With Naruto, he had just finished with his business and zipped himself up when he spoke out, You know your stealth is horrible. The 2 genin behind Naruto froze mid-attack. He had sensed them. They struck quickly after their momentary pause only to find Naruto. That Naruto went up in a puff of smoke. Geez, so vicious to my poor Kage Bunshin, whatever did he do to you? Naruto's voice seemed to come from everywhere around them. Little did they know he had about 50 Kage Bunshin hiding saying the same thing all at once. He simply smirked when he say them go back to back. This was too easy. Suddenly there was a twin shout of, Byakurai. White lightning, author's note. Always loved this technique from Bleach. Still don't own it. And 2 bolts of lightning struck the rain ninja in the chest. Naruto sighed at their stupefied looks and simply rummaged through their pockets, taking their kunai and gear until he found a heaven scroll. HMPH thanks guys. He said, twirling the scroll. By the way, that paralysis will wear off in about 2 hours. Byakurai does more damage the more chakra I put into it, but if I put too little you simply get paralyzed. Later. He jumped off into the trees. He met his team halfway through the tree and Sasuke simply heffed while Sakura chose to ignore him. That is until he pulled out the heaven scroll. They both stared at him wide-eyed until a fierce wind blew him away. Luckily he was able to hold onto the scroll. With Naruto. Naruto landed on his back in the middle of a clearing groaning. Aw man that hurts. He stood up cracking his back. That's gonna leave a mark in the morning. He looked up to come face to snout with a snake the size of an elephant. Ah come on. He yelled and he dodged its first strike. He rolled as he hit the ground and came up to one knee staring at the snake who was eyeing him rather hungrily. He sighed and stood upright. I do not have time to deal with you. So I'm gonna have to cut this short. The snake seemed confused. How could this little human just claim he would beat a summon? Naruto ran through hand signs faster than most Junin could follow and yelled, Raiden, Raryuden no Jutsu, Lightning Release, Lightning Dragon Technique. A dragon made of pure lightning erupted from Naruto's mouth and streaked towards the surprised summon. The snake tried to dodge but was too bulky. It ended up being slammed against a tree and disappearing. Ya no, my first 2 fights after training with Sora ni-san have been pretty disappointing. Naruto said with disappointment. Oh well, let's see what's going on with Sasuke and Sakura. He jumped off towards where he thought they were. After about 5 minutes of traveling, he came upon the scene of Orochimaru biting Sasuke. Now being around Anko for 2 months, Naruto knew what that meant. Sasuke now had a curse seal. Naruto swore and watched as Orochimaru told Sakura that Sasuke would come to him for power and he melted into the woodwork. Not if me and Sora ni-san have anything to say about it, you perverted freak. Naruto thought. Naruto jumped down and looked at Sakura. What happened? Sakura started bawling about Sasuke being beaten around by some guy named Orochimaru. Apparently, Sasuke had used their Earth Scroll to try and get away and Orochimaru burned it. After she was down, Naruto sighed and said, Alright, we need to find shelter. I fought a huge snake about 2 miles west of here and we need to move east. Look for a cave or some open routes we can use. About 1.5 miles east they found an alcove at the base of a tree and Sakura offered to take guard while Naruto slept since he had fought. Naruto nodded and went to sleep, although it was restless due to Sasuke being so near him and the aura he was giving off. With Anko, after the discovery of bodies. Anko was blazing through the trees at a breakneck pace. Why is he here? She thought. He couldn't be here for me, could he? Suddenly she stopped on a tree branch. Come out, I finally found you. Orochimaru. Orochimaru came out of the tree chuckling. Kukuaku, Anko-chan, it is so good to see you again. He said, smiling devilishly. Save it, she roared. I'm going to kill you here and now. She declared as she charged him with the snake style. She feinted with her right fist before she threw a left. Orochimaru deftly knocked it to the side before countering with his own left. She dodged by jumping back and shouting, Sene Jaishu, hidden snake hands. Orochimaru smirked before thrusting his hands forward and yelling, Taju Sene Jaishu, multi-hidden snake hands. Anko's snakes were soon overwhelmed, so she ran through some hand seals and put her hands to her mouth yelling, Kaden, Hausenka no Jutsu, Phoenix Flower Technique. She spat out 12 fireballs, destroying the remaining snakes before she found herself knocked into the tree and falling to the ground. She was able to grip the tree with chakra, slowing her descent and landing safely before she looked all around preparing to defend herself. Suddenly she fell to the ground, grabbing her curse mark as it flared wildly. Orochimaru stepped out of the shadows holding his hand in the snake hand sign. Kukukuaku, Anko-chan, fighting me while you still have my mark is not a very good idea. I thought I taught you better than that. He admonished, obviously amused at her plight. Exclamation mark quote. She yelled and spit at his feet before squirming in pain once again. Now, Anko-chan, such language. Very unladylike. I do wish I could get rid of a failure such as you, but I have a message I want you to deliver. Tell Sarutobi-sensei not to cancel the exams or I will burn Konoha to the ground. Orochimaru said as he advanced on Anko. Now that you have that, such delicious pain is making me want to see you in more of it. He had a wild glint in his eye that promised something Anko really didn't want to find out. Luckily for her, Orochimaru jumped back just as a lightning bolt struck Anko. Orochimaru was shocked at first, but then his eyes narrowed. This was no ordinary bolt of lightning. No, this bolt was silver. With the Hokage. 10 minutes before, Sarutobi was enjoying the day. He didn't have massive amounts of paperwork to deal with. He had set a trap to get Tsunade back to Konoha for a time. Jiraiya was on his way back with a new volume of Ika Ika. Yes, today was a good day. Until a team of Anbu bursts through his door. Calm down, Sarutobi said. They were acting like rookies and Sarutobi couldn't understand why. He sighed and rubbed his temples as they settled down. Report, he said. The leader stepped forward. Sir. Orochimaru has been spotted in the Forest of Death. Anko has taken off in pursuit. What are your orders? Sarutobi could barely register the form of Sora behind the Anbu, and he could have sworn the man knew Hiraishin to move that fast. Gather all the Anbu. As soon as he is identified, alert me. I shall be waiting in the tower. Go. The Anbu shunned away and the Hokage sighed, thinking, I'm too old for this shit. Sora, please save her. Back with Anko. Current time. Anko was expecting death when the bolt hit, and yet she sat within the lightning strangely comforted. It twisted and warped until it took the form of something serpentine. Silver scales gleamed in the sunlight that poured through the hole in the trees. It had to be as long as a great white shark. Its head and body were rather smooth. The eyes were slitted golden orbs that stared dangerously at Orochimaru, its body protectively coiled around Anko. Its wings were rather large, and along its tail it had small fan-like appendages for turns and balance. Its claws were rather vicious looking, with 5 claws on each hand, although still stuck with that streamlined look. It had its fang bared and was growling softly. The main dragon from How to Train My Dragon, with actual claws and silver. Orochimaru could tell this creature was powerful, and he was tired from fighting 2 battles. His fun would have to wait. HMPH, deliver my message, Anko. I shall return. And melted into the tree. The dragon growled softly until he was sure that Orochimaru was gone. He gently nudged Anko towards his back. She was a little taken aback before she climbed on. You are the first and only human I have ever allowed to ride me hubby Heim. Appreciate and enjoy the ride. It'll be over soon enough. Anko's eyes widened. Sora? She asked. The dragon nodded and mentally spoke again, hold on. He took off, nearly breaking the sound barrier. They arrived at the tower in under a minute. He trotted up to the medical entrance where the senseis and the Hokage were waiting. Their eyes widened as they landed, and many of the Junin tensed for a fight. Sora, is that you? Sarutobi asked. The dragon nodded his head as the medics got Anko onto a stretcher. He glowed silver a moment before changing back into his human form. He rushed to Anko's side. He smiled when he saw her relatively unharmed. Sarutobi cleared his throat. Sora looked at them sheepishly and said, a surprise. Everyone's sweat dropped. Sarutobi sighed, well, as long as Anko is fine, then who cares? Thank you, Sora-san. He bowed lightly to Sora, surprising everyone. Sora chuckled and said, Ma worm. You're welcome, but don't bow, I hate formalities. I'm a fighter first, diplomat second. Sarutobi chuckled and nodded. Sora said, in any case, can I go? Sarutobi had to struggle to not break out in a huge grin. Hi, go check on Anko please. Sora nodded and headed off down the corridor to the infirmary. Looks like you may have a chance to break her mask after all. The Hokage allowed that smile to reach his face and turned to deal with the Junins. This was gonna take a while. Naruto was sleeping lightly when he heard Sakura throw a kunai. Naruto sighed to himself and shifted slightly. Suddenly, He felt the scroll that Sora gave to him before he left and pulled it out because he was still slightly tired. Dear Naruto. Hey there. You must be in that tight spot I mentioned earlier. Or maybe you're just curious. In any case, wipe some blood on the seal below and channel some chakra into it. You'll be in for a nice surprise. Hehe, chibi Sora giving a victory sign. Stupid Aniki. Oh well, might as well find out what this is. Naruto thought as he wiped his blood and poured some chakra into the seal. With a slight poof, Naruto was staring into the amber eyes of Shiroi. Now Naruto was confused, that is until he saw Shiroi with metal gauntlets converting her claws that seemed to move with her paws, not hindering her nor making sound. She had a metal face mask that protected her head along with some armor along the sides to protect her if she was attacked there. All in all, she looked ready for a battle. A small strip of paper floated down from the smoke. P.S. Hope you like the gift. Shiroi here has been blessed by the dragons. I'm sure she will be of some help. Naruto chuckled and looked at Shiroi, who cocked her head to the side. Hehe, that's awesome. I can't wait to see what she can do. He thought as he scratched under her jaw. She mewed softly in appreciation until they heard Rock Lee outside proclaiming something to Sakura. Come on Shiroi-chan. We got work to do. Naruto said, standing up. Shiroi just yipped and gained a mischievous look similar to Naruto when he's ready for a prank. Ooh, this is gonna be fun. Naruto thought as he headed out of the hovel. As they walked out of the hovel, they came across Lee getting blasted by Dosu with his melody arm, and getting knocked unconscious due to the strain on his ears. Naruto motioned for Shiroi to go after the female holding Sakura as he stepped forward, and Shiroi seemed to melt into the shadows slightly. Oi, who the hell are you? Naruto asked, crossing his arms and trying to look intimidating. Dosu looked a little surprised, he thought they were both out cold. Zaku, on the other hand, name's Zaku Abumi, and your death dealer. He yelled, charging Naruto. Zaku, wait. Dosu said, trying to stop his teammate from doing something stupid. Too late for that. Zaku charged right at Naruto and threw a fast right. Naruto expertly sidestepped and grabbed Zaku's arm before spinning with Zaku and throwing him back towards his teammate. Zaku was pissed. No one manhandled him like that. Zankaha. Decapitating airwaves, he yelled, thrusting his arms forward. Naruto's eyes bulged before he jumped, dodging the attack. Dosu was watching fervently, hoping to figure out the new arrival while Team 10 was watching in the bushes. As Naruto landed, he found himself on the end of a vicious, albeit sloppy, taijutsu assault from Zaku. Right, left, sweep kick, knee. Every attack expertly dodged or redirected by Naruto. Naruto himself was happy to see his training paying off. As Zaku threw a punch, Naruto dropped for a sweep kick that Zaku jumped to avoid. Following through, Naruto rose into a spinning uppercut that knocked Zaku clear across the field. Man, when did Naruto get so good? Ino asked. Troublesome, looks like we won't have to jump in after all. Shikamaru said. Munch munch munch, guess who? As Naruto landed, he glared at Zaku, who was getting back up and wiping blood from the side of his mouth. Just as Zaku was about to charge, Kin yelped in pain and let go of Sakura's hair, grabbing her leg. She quickly looked around until she heard a soft growl from the tree behind her. She spun around just in time to get headbutted by Shiroi. Luckily for Shiroi, her fast mask took most of the damage. Unluckily for Kin, she was knocked out cold. Way to go, Shiroi-chan. Naruto said gleefully, now we have a hostage. Dosu was silently cursing his teammates' lack of awareness, even though they hadn't been briefed that the boy had a companion, while Zaku was chuckling. Naruto looked at him funnily until Zaku spoke up, you think we care about her? She's nothing more than a hindrance. If she's in the way, I'll blast her along with you. Zankaha. Decapitating airwaves, he yelled, thrusting his hands forward. Shiroi grabbed Kin's collar in her teeth and jumped to the side, barely dodging the blast. Naruto, meanwhile, made the hand seal to release his chakra weights. Suddenly, evil chakra filled the air. Everyone froze, then turned to the hovel where Sasuke was standing with the curse mark active. Naruto was right in front of him while Sakura was a bit to the left and Shiroi and Kin were farther right. Sasuke looked at the disheveled appearance of Sakura and said, "Who did that to you?" While many people had different thoughts running through their heads, Naruto's and Dosu's made the most sense. Dosu was wondering why Orochimaru had given Sasuke a curse seal then ordered his death. Naruto, however, was worried. Crap. This is not good. His chakra feels too much like a demon's. At this rate, my dragon side is gonna take over and kill him. I've gotta stop him before things get out of hand. Zaku got cocky and said, "I did it to her. And I'll do the same to you." Zenkakyokua. Extreme decapitating airwaves, he thrust his hands forward straight at Naruto and Sasuke. As the dust settled, both were nowhere to be found. "Ha ha ha, not so tough now are you?" Zaku exclaimed. "Care to test that?" Sasuke said darkly. He reappeared in front of Zaku and proceeded to smash him face first into the ground. He grabbed Zaku's arms and pulled them back at an unnatural angle. "You seem awfully proud of these arms. Perhaps we should see what you're like without them." Sasuke bent back Zaku's right arm until a sickening crack was heard and everyone winced as Zaku screamed in pain before blacking out. Sasuke was about to head towards Dosu when Naruto appeared behind him and chopped him across the neck, making the marks recede as he faded into unconsciousness. Naruto sighed in relief, thanked Kami. "I'm glad Aniki taught me how to control my dragon urges." He turned to Dosu. "I'm tired, leave your scroll and you can leave with your teammates unharmed." Dosu nodded and pulled out an earth scroll. "Phew, we can head in now." Naruto thought. He wasn't really tired, he just didn't want to kill him if he could avoid it. Dosu picked up his teammates. "When we meet again we can't back down, so expect a full fight." With that he jumped into the trees. Shiroi yipped at Naruto and pointed to the bushes and up in the trees. Naruto nodded and said, "Come on out guys. If you wanna fight, I'll be happy to take you on. If not, perhaps we could all travel to the tower together. Nothing against working together after you're done, right?" Shikamaru and his team came out of the bush with him saying, "Troublesome, we are done and you're right, so we will travel with you. Maybe I can find out a bit more about you, Uzumaki Naruto." Never mind, it's too troublesome." Anyone who could have heard his thoughts would have sweat dropped. Naruto looked around and noticed Sakura and Ino fawning over Sasuke before he looked up to see Team 9 standing with Lee over Neji's shoulder. "We have no need for you, goodbye," Neji said, and they disappeared into the trees with an apologetic look from Tenten. "All right then, let's head out. I'll carry Sasuke. We can make it to the tower by the end of the day and have 2 days to rest," Naruto said. They all nodded. After all, this guy was completely winning against those Oto shinobi when they could have barely hurt them. They set out at a brisk pace. Same time. Tower Infirmary. Anko groaned as she woke up. Suddenly her memories came back from 2 days ago and she almost bolted out of her bed. She was held down by 2 rather strong arms. She looked over at who was holding her down and her sharp retort died in her throat. Sora had his head laying just below her pillow with his arms firmly holding her to the bed. It was obviously an uncomfortable position seeing as he was seated next to her bed, but he looked peaceful. She heard a chuckle and someone said, "You know he hasn't left your side for 2 days now. He had them bring his own tray of food so he wouldn't have to leave." Sarutobi smiled seeing the look of shock on Anko's face. No one has ever sat by my bed while I was out," she thought. Her shock turned to gratitude and a genuine smile spread across her face as she gently tried to remove his arms. He snuggled his head closer and tightened his arm around her midsection. She blushed because he was pushing right into the side of her. Suddenly that registered on her female protection area of her brain and she grew a tick mark before smashing her hand into his head. Sora was dreaming a wonderful dream full of open skies and Anko riding his dragon form when a lightning bolt hit him square on the head. He bolted upright, yelping in pain while the Hokage snickered, and Anko had a flame of righteous woman fury in her eyes. Sora smiled widely, the pain forgotten, when he saw Anko awake. "You're okay," he said, smiling. "Of course I'm okay, you moron. And what did you think you were doing dropping in as a dragon? Not to mention who gave you the right to watch over me, let alone sleep next to my bed?" Anko asked, ranting. Sora was a little shell-shocked until he realized it was her coping method for the failure, and Sarutobi simply stepped out of the room, letting Sora take Anko's rant. Kami knows he'd be hearing more of them in the future. Sora smiled and was actually chuckling lightly as Anko continued her rant on how stupid and moronic and idiotic he was. "And why are you laughing at me?" she screamed at him. Sora continued smiling and replied, "You're cute when you're angry." That shut her up. Her face was redder than a tomato, and it was not from anger. He really thinks I'm cute. Not but cute. What do you mean by that? Anko asked, her blush subsiding slightly, thought she was still red. Quite simply, I think you are cute when you are angry, he said cheerfully, pausing and making a point at each stop. She stared at him for a minute before putting her head down, letting her bangs cover her light brown eyes. "Why?" she asked simply but softly. "Why what?" Sora asked, confused what she meant. "Why did you stay by my side?" she almost yelled at him. "Why did you save me? Why did you let me ride you if you haven't let anyone else?" Sora was silent for a moment before he responded, "Because I wanted to." "Do I really need a reason to help you?" She almost broke down right there, but she had one last thing she wanted to ask him. Did you really mean what you said about the curse seal?" she asked. Sora frowned. "Of course I did. I saw what that man did to you in the forest with just a little amount of chakra. Much more and you would have died." Anko felt sad. "So it's pity that he wants to mark me. Just to get me out of Orochimaru's grasp." Sora smiled softly and almost as if reading her thoughts said, "Of course, having you for a mate would make for an interesting eternity indeed." Her head shot up so fast you'd think she got whiplash. Do you really mean that?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. He chuckled and hugged her. "Of course, you don't think I spent all this time with you just for Naruto eh?" She really did start to cry then. She buried her face in his chest, happy that someone would care for her instead of just throwing her away like Orochimaru did. She sobbed and told him how no one ever stayed by her bedside before to wait for her to wake up. How no one wanted to be her friend because of her past association. And exactly how much it meant that he came to help her and went so far in caring for her. Before you ask, yes, Sora had an inkling, but he never pried into her history. She wiped the tears from her eyes and smiled at him. "Mark me," she said cheerfully. Sora chuckled. "You sure you?" He didn't get to finish because she smashed her lips into his. "Mark me now or I'm going to remove the reason for you to want to mark me," she said sweetly. Sora gulped and nodded before channeling his silver chakra into his canines. His eyes flashed golden for a second before he bit down right on the cursed seal. The seal contorted and Anko hissed in pain, but Sora's eyes glazed over. Inside the seal, Orochimaru's soul was growling in annoyance. How dare this man try to override my seal? Sora arrived and took one look at Orochimaru before grinning ferally. "You know, this seal makes it so the two souls have to duke it out. And I assure you," his eyes flashed gold again, "my soul is far stronger than yours." Orochimaru was actually scared for once, well, this part of his soul anyway. Sora took his time. Almost 5 hours of non-stop torture in the seal was only 2 seconds outside. Sora sighed. "This has become boring. I can't actually kill you, so I'm going to end this. Be gone." He flicked Orochimaru in his head and the soul shattered, breaking the seal. Back outside, Sora's eyes came back into focus and he let go of Anko's neck. The seal swirled for a second before becoming a silver dragon with a golden snake wrapped comfortably around its body. Sora smiled and looked at Anko. He grabbed a mirror and handed it to her. Here hubby Heim, check out your new tattoo, he said jokingly. She glared at the nickname for a minute before adjusting the small mirror. She gasped and then smiled brightly. She wondered why the snake was golden though, until she looked at her eyes. Where before they had been a light brown, now they were a deep shade of brilliant gold. Guess I know why it's golden, and I can't get mad at his nickname, she thought. She looked at Sora, who was grinning goofily before she grabbed him once again and started a tongue war. After a minute or so they broke for air and she said, well, hubby, I guess you need to buy me some new clothes. After all, I need a wedding present before we get to the honeymoon. Now Anko may not look it, but she loved to get new clothes, especially kinky things. Surprisingly, she was not into BDSM. Sora on the other hand was sweating thinking how much his new wife was gonna cost him. She quickly got up and chuckled, that'll have to wait till after the exams though. We have a job here, remember? Sora sighed and nodded. Anko got dressed and they made their way to the waiting area. Time skip. Chunin exam preliminaries. After arriving 2 days ago and Sasuke getting his seal air sealed, Team 7 had taken it easy and relaxed. Luckily no one had attacked them, and when they got to the doors Iruka had greeted them from the scrolls. Unfortunately, Sasuke had been pissed when he awoke and demanded that the Dobi tell him how Naruto beat Sasuke. Now they were standing in a giant hall with 2 balconies on each side, a viewing platform for the Hokage and his entourage, and a statue with the ram hand sign. With the Hokage were all the clan heads and their respective families, meaning immediate family only. The Hokage stood up and said, welcome, I am pleased to see all of you here today. Now, let us get right to business. Anko. Hi, Hokage-sama. Now since the second exam did not weed out enough of you brats, we need to have an elimination round. Anko said. Apparently no one took notice of her eye color change. Well, except for Naruto and Kurenai, because they were actually looking at her eyes. Looks like I gained a Nei-san, Naruto thought happily. Kurenai, however, was curious. Hayate stepped forward. Excuse me, Anko. Allow me, Hayate Gecko, to explain. Dots equals coughing. Before we begin, would anyone like to quit? It will not affect your team. Sakura was worried about Sasuke but then remembered Tei extra seal placed on him, so she kept quiet. Kabuto raised his hand. I wish to forfeit. I got hurt on the last day and I don't believe I can continue. Hayate nodded and Anko called out his name. Naruto made a discreet signal to Sora, who was standing with the Hokage, for enemy. Sora turned to the Hokage. Excuse me, what stats do you have on that man? Sarutobi was a little surprised but motioned to Anko, who said, Kabuto Yakushi. Average genin, son to a medical ninja, took the exam 7 times. And always dropped out before preliminaries. Anbu. 2 Anbu appeared at the Hokage's order, have that man followed by a squad. He turned to Sora, thank you for catching him. Sora chuckled, don't thank me. Thank Naruto, I simply relayed the message. The clan heads looked rather shocked aside from Hana and Sum, who were internally laughing up a storm. Sarutobi nodded, knowing the news was for the clan heads. Very well, regardless if we capture him or not. Have Naruto come by my office for AC ranked spy pay. If there is more when we capture him, he will be paid accordingly. Sora nodded and looked back at the proceedings. Apparently, the rules were explained and people were making their way to the balcony. Most of the clan heads stayed with the Hokage, however the Inuzukas and Abarames joined their children on the balcony. Naruto smiled at seeing Hana even if it was standing by Kiba. He hadn't stayed near his team, opting instead to stand at a midway point between all the teams. He sighed, this is gonna be boring. Why can't I go all out? He thought as he watched the screen. It lit up with Sasuke Uchiha vs. Akado Yoroi. Naruto watched intently, trying to see why Sasuke kept dodging and backing up instead of fighting. Akado decided to tell everyone about his ability to drain his opponent's chakra just by touch, and Naruto frowned. You really shouldn't give away your only trump card. He thought as he watched Sasuke blast Akato with a Gokaku no Jutsu, Grand Fireball technique. Bye-bye Akato. He smirked as Sasuke knocked him out after he barely dodged the fireball. Shibi and Shino approached Naruto, both nodding to him and joining him silently. Naruto was a little curious until Shino spoke up for once, although only the three present heard him. Naruto-san, because of my Kikai, I was told of your burden. Over the past 3 months, I have not felt your visitors' chakra. May I inquire as to why? Naruto was a little shocked and looked at Shibi. Yes, I told him because he figured it out in class. The Hokage gave me permission. I apologize if this offends you, Naruto-san. Naruto chuckled. Just Naruto, please. I can't stand formalities. As for the fox, at this point several of the Junin were listening in, and Naruto scowled. I'm afraid I cannot divulge that information because there are prying jerks around. Shibi and Shino looked around, noticing the Junins in both of their hives got agitated. I apologize for my rudeness, Naruto. We shall be going, Shino said. Naruto shook his head. Not at all, Shino, and please stay if you wish. It was not your rudeness. If you wish to know the story, come find me or Sora after the exams. Shibi nodded and Shino simply stood back where he was actually comfortable with another who carried a burden that people discriminate against. Hinata, while over her crush, still looked at the new Naruto and wondered what happened to change him. The Junin who were listening were all worried though. From what it sounded like, the Kyuubi was gone. If that was true, then where did it go? During this time, Kankuro had fought Masumi Tsurugi and beaten him soundly. Apparently Kankuro was a puppet user and Tsurugi could contort himself like rubber. However, after getting hit with some poison, Tsurugi quickly lost the match. The screen flashed and Shino vs. Zaku came across the screen. Dosu warned Zaku about paying attention and keeping it cool. Shibi simply nodded to Shino, who proceeded downstairs. As the fight started, the Junin approached Naruto. Kakashi spoke up. Naruto, what were you talking about with Shino? Naruto frowned and looked towards Sora, who was staring rather intently at everywhere but at Naruto. It was personal and you should know that. Asuma stepped forward, genuinely concerned. Naruto, if there is something wrong, I'm sure my father. Naruto sighed. This is personal. You have no say in the matter and neither does the Hokage. Please leave me be and return to your students. Shibi's hive was buzzing slightly because he was annoyed at the Junin's flagrant disregard for subtlety. The genin were all focused on them instead of the fight. Even if the fight was already a sure thing for Shino. Kakashi frowned and said, Naruto, I am your sensei. I should have your trust, and if there is something wrong with the fox. Once again Naruto cut him off with a snort. Sensei. What right do you have to claim that title with me? In the 6 months I have been on your team, what have you taught me? Kakashi bristled. You have learned the value of teamwork and tree walking, of course, and... He kept thinking, what have I taught Naruto? To any and all Kakashi fans, my Naruto is a bit bitter, sorry for this. Naruto scoffed. That's it, Hataki-san. Even then, I am the only one who learned teamwork. Sasuke hasn't helped since Wave, and Sakura is too weak and fangirlish to care about me. You even let her hit me daily. Tell me, what have you taught Sasuke? By this time, Shino had won his fight and most of the eyes were on Naruto's group. Sora was smirking, thinking of the smackdown Kakashi was getting as a sensei. You may be a great shinobi, but you allowed your so-called debt to Obito to cloud your judgment. He thought. Kakashi was thinking about Sasuke and his team. Sasuke learned the fire dragon, Phyonxic fire, and of course we started his elemental manipulation. But, I really haven't taught Sakura or Naruto anything. How could I have let that happen? His visible eye widened. Naruto sighed and turned back to the screen that was flashing. You know your mistake. It's too late to fix with me, maybe you can make it up to Sakura. If you can do that, I'll call you sensei again. The Junins were a little shocked that Kakashi was doing this, but only Guy understood why. Don't let that fool you, senseis, each of you has a weak point. Kakashi's was just the most obvious. Naruto said. Shibi was rather impressed at how he skillfully dodged the original question and got them off on a tangent. The screen flashed for Ino Yamanaka and Sakura Haruno. Naruto groaned, as did Sora. The clan heads near Sora heard him and Inoichi asked, "What's wrong, Sora-san?" Sora sighed. "I'm sorry to say this, but this is gonna be a draw. Those two down there got here on the coattails of their teammates. They are fangirls of the highest caliber, and while Ino may have her family jutsu, Sakura is nothing but an academy student with a good memory. If she was to go into the medic corps or do genjutsu, then she might be decent by now." Inoichi and the rest of the clan heads frowned. "Surely you are exaggerating. I honestly wish I was Inoichi-san. Their senseis and the academy system here have failed them horribly," Sora said. Sarutobi sighed. "No matter what I do, the civilian council shoots down all progressive training for the school, saying it's not cost effective or that the civilian students can't pass." Sora eyed the Hokage as they watched the fight. "You are Hokage worm. Ignore them and make the changes. If you don't, you will lose more shinobi than you will save. Not to mention the fate that awaits Kunoichi should they be captured." Everyone winced at that. It was well known women were subjugated to rape more often than not. Fangirls expect their knight in shining armor to always be there. When they aren't, well, the results ain't pretty. I'm sure you know this. Everyone nodded. They looked back at the fight to see it was indeed a draw, and, while they fought admirably, their skills were terrible. Inoichi thanked Sora and said he would take to training both girls personally if that's what it took to get them to an acceptable level. Sora smiled at that. The next two fights were rather uninteresting. Tamari was the worst possible matchup for Tenten, however, when Tamari was about to let Tenten fall onto her fan, Sora appeared and caught Tenten. A fighter who gave her all should be honored, not humiliated. Tamari, he said, glaring at the Suna Nin, who shook slightly before huffing and going back to the stands. Shikamaru vs. Kin was an intellectual battle, and Kin was knocked unconscious due to the planned strategy of the famed Nara mind. As she was being taken off the field, however, Naruto noticed the look the Sound Junin had in his eyes. He didn't like it one bit. He turned to Shibi and whispered, "Sibi-san, as a favor for the story, I would like for you to take Kintsuchi under your protection." Shibi raised an eye at that, and Naruto sighed. "I have reason to believe Otogakure is actually run by Orochimaru. If you take her into protective custody, then she could give you information. She does not have the same vicious streak as her teammates, and I do not want a woman to be harmed if I can help it." Shibi nodded and walked down to the infirmary. He would return without Kin, but she was in his clan's infirmary per her request after being offered asylum. The screen flashed again, and this time it stopped on two very important names. Naruto Uzumaki vs. Kiba Inuzuka. Naruto sighed at having to fight Kiba. He had hoped to hold off and prove his worth some other way. Still, he did interrupt Naruto's makeout time with Hana. Kiba, on the other hand, was whooping and hollering. "Come on, Akamaru. We got the dead last, this should be easy," he said. Hana shook her head and said, "Kiba, don't count him out, that was half a year ago, he has changed since then." Kiba scowled. "Yeah, he's changed alright. To think you wanna date him. I won't allow it, and I'll show that Dobi he can't date you," he yelled. Now this had several reactions. Most of the clan heads were actually happy that the neglected boy had someone. Ino and Sakura, who had both woken up, wondered what she was smoking. The Hokage, Sora, and Anko were smirking up a storm. Most of the guys were congratulating Naruto in their minds except for Shino, who looked at Naruto and then gave him a low five. Naruto was smiling like he won the lottery. Hana was blushing so red that Hinata would be put to shame. Unfortunately, she was standing near Hinata and Kurenai when that was said, and once it sunk in, well, she had two beams of concentrated ki coming at her. Sum was grinning like a madman, but that faded as she felt her daughter take a step back towards her. Hana glanced at Hinata and Kurenai to see both of them pissed. Kurenai for Hinata because despite breaking her obsessive need to get near the boy, she hadn't totally broken her heart. She just wasn't that cruel. Hinata, on the other hand, was pissed because she hadn't given up on Naruto. She had only pretended to so her sensei would get off her back. So here we are, with Hana being a little scared. That is until Kiba and Naruto appeared downstairs and everyone turned their attention to them. Dobi, I'm gonna beat you and once I do you will not date my sister, got it? Kiba said with a snarl. Akamaru was actually hiding in Kiba's jacket. He could tell something was off about Naruto and that he had gained alpha status. Naruto growled softly and pulled out a scroll before wiping blood and some chakra on it. Your sister chooses who to date, Mutt. If she wants to date me, well, who am I to deny such a lovely lady? Shiroi appeared in front of Naruto, with a puff of smoke, in her battle armor. She eyed Kiba before yipping in happiness as she dropped into a fighting stance. Up in the stands, Hana was blushing again and Sum was chuckling, looks like your mate is a smooth talker. I wonder if his tongue is good for anything else. Mom, Hana said indignantly. Still looks like I was right about Shiroi. She has had some training. She thought. Your mom was right though, his tongue is good, feral grin. Naruto stared at Kiba for a few minutes as Akamaru feebly jumped out of the jacket. Shiroi-chan, why don't you play with Akamaru for a little while? I wanna fight Kiba one-on-one. Fine with me, Dobi. Akamaru, take care of that fox. Kiba said confidently. Shiroi and Akamaru shared a look before Akamaru looked at Kiba with a, what the air you smoking? Look. Shiroi, on the other hand, desummoned her armor. Yes, she's able to do that. She slowly sauntered over to Akamaru who had his eyes glued to her form. She walked right in front of him and then trotted past him, whipping her tail across his snout before dashing over to a corner. Akamaru blinked twice before his mind rebooted and he quickly took off after the vixen. Everyone noticed they had stopped in a corner and Shiroi was scratching behind Akamaru's ear as his foot thumped against the ground. Sum and Hana were laughing while Kiba looked positively outraged. Naruto chuckled and then said, well, she is a vixen after all. Not what I meant, but that works too. Shiroi just gave him a foxy grin. Kiba glared at Naruto and said, let's start this already. I need to defeat this Dobi. With a shout of, Hajime, from Hayate, Kiba dashed forward. He threw a straight right which Naruto dodged and threw his own right which was blocked by Kiba who jumped back. He growled lightly and yelled, Shikyaku no Jutsu. Four legs technique, his nails grew longer into claws and he looked more feral. He crouched down on all four limbs. Let's see you block this. Suga. Spining Fang, he jumped and spun in midair, becoming a whirlwind of motion, charging straight for Naruto. Naruto was rather impressed. He had seen this move before and knew it was not an easy one to learn. He made the hand seal to release his weights and, just before he got hit, disappeared. Kiba stopped spinning and landed looking around. Where are you? He yelled, trying to pinpoint him with his smell. Naruto chuckled to himself and dropped from the ceiling. When he was in range he yelled, Ryu Koka. Dragon's Descent, he flipped in midair and brought his heel down straight into the back of Kiba's head and the force knocked him halfway across the arena. Kiba, you're a good fighter, but you should stay out of your sister's business. You have no right, Naruto said. Kiba stood up and spit out some blood from his mouth, bullshit. There's no way you're worthy of my sister. Naruto sighed and his eyes glowed a deeper blue for a second before he said, as you wish, Kiba. I will beat you with my next attack. If I don't, I won't date your sister. Kiba's eyes lit up and he smirked, fine. Let's see what you got. Up in the stands, Sum and Hana were a little worried. They didn't want Kiba to die for his stupidity. Don't worry. He won't kill him. Although this will probably hurt if he's gonna do what I think he is. Sora said. They nodded at him and returned to watching the match. With the clan heads, Choza spoke up, why do you believe in him? He is strong, but how do you know what he's going to do, Sora-san? Sora chuckled. Sarutobi didn't tell you. I trained the hatchling. Why else would I join the senseis? Luckily for me, Kakashi let a gold mine slip away. I simply capitalized on it. The clan heads were both shocked and intrigued. How had this man made Naruto that strong in only 3 months? They'd probably never guess that mass shadow clones and a lot of physical workout helped. Naruto smiled and said, well, Kiba, this is it. Sorry, but this is gonna hurt. A lot. Naruto blurred from view as he charged at Kiba. No one saw the lightning chakra accumulated in his hands. He quickly took Kiba's feet out from under him before he punched him into the air. He appeared in front of Kiba and threw multiple strikes that would have killed him had Naruto not held back. Following this, he twisted in midair, backhanding Kiba into the ground before landing beside him. As he landed, though, he spoke in a calm voice, Ryu Renden. Dragon's Barrage. Kiba coughed, barely conscious. Well, Kiba, you haven't touched me this entire fight. I just beat you with one move. Still think I'm adobe or weak? Naruto asked seriously. Kiba shook his head but said, why can't I move? Simple, I charged my hits with lightning chakra. It'll take about 3 hours for your body to flush it out and you'll be fine aside from some bruising. I held back. Naruto replied. Kiba nodded and fell into unconsciousness as the medics took him away. Naruto lightning shunned Shin to Hana and frowned slightly. Sorry about hurting him, but he needed to keep out of your business. Hana chuckled. Sum sighed and took off to the infirmary. Hinata and Kurenai were still glaring daggers at Hana, who had moved to stand next to Naruto's spot before. Most were surprised at his win and Sasuke was wanting the power he exhibited. Kakashi was still a little lost but understood Naruto's comment about himself, and he resolved to help Sakura during the month break even if she wasn't in the finals. Hana smiled as the screen rolled and all eyes turned to see the next match. She quickly turned to Naruto and gave him a 10-second tongue war before whispering, enough for now. Watch the fights. Don't wanna get caught by Hinata. Naruto frowned and said, I don't really understand. She supposedly likes me yet can't say it. If she had. Hana nodded as they saw Hinata versus Neji. She is a shy one, but if she can't lay a claim then you aren't off limits. Besides, she grinned ferally, you're mine now, so don't even think about it. Naruto chuckled and wrapped his arms around her waist, saying, never. But that doesn't mean I can't be her friend, right? She looks like she could use one. Hana shook her head. As long as I'm here, I don't mind friendship. Try anything more and you'll lose what makes you a man, okay, sweetie? She said sweetly at the end. Naruto shook his head vigorously. He watched as Neji put Hinata down with mind games and saw how Hiashi seemed to actually nod at one point. How could someone in your own family not believe in you? He was outraged. Hinata, don't listen to that crap. Naruto said, everyone has strength to fight, all you have to do is believe in yourself. What others think. Hinata looked at Naruto thankfully and activated her Byakugan, saying, Naruto-kun is right. However, you are the one who is denying his fate, Neji-ni-san. Sora frowned as he watched the fight. No one was inherently that shy and had such low self-esteem, someone had to work on it. He looked at Anko and remembered she was friends with Kurenai. Say hubby Haim, most people gasped that he called her that and didn't die. Why does Hinata have such low self-esteem? Anko sighed and thought for a minute. Nai-chan once said that her family berates her constantly because she is too kind for their image. Her father brutally spars with her and she holds back so she doesn't hurt her little sister. At least that's what she told me. Hiashi spoke up. She is worthless as a clan heir. She is far too kind and she does not possess the necessary will to carry on as a clan head. Sora turned and was about to burn the man into ashes when Sarutobi spoke up. I know you aren't happy, Sora-san, but it is a clan matter. I cannot interfere. Sora growled as he watched Hinata get struck in the heart a second time. She had put up a far better fight than many thought possible. Heck, even Hanabi had not fared this well against Neji. She stood once again and this time Neji was going for the kill. The Junin quickly appeared and held him back. Special treatment for the main branch. TCH, how typical. Take another look, Fate's bitch. Sora said. Neji looked straight forward to see a hand covered in lightning chakra barely 3 inches from his face, with his pointer and pinky fingers where Neji's pupils should be. You were just saved from blindness. Naruto, calm down, he said sternly. Hinata coughed up blood and the medics arrived just to say they couldn't help her. Sensei, can you do something? Naruto asked. Sora sighed. Ryu Mashi. Dragon's Mercy, silver chakra poured into Hinata's wounds and healed them. Sora sat back, breathing hard. Damn it. I'm not a healer, so this takes about 3 times the normal amount, and even then this is the best healing jutsu we have. He looked at Hiashi and Hanabi, who were both staring at Hinata with disgust. Even though he was tired, now he was pissed. Alright Worm, you can't do anything, but I sure as hell can. Sora disappeared and then reappeared next to Hinata with Hiashi and Hanabi. What do you think you are doing? Hiashi asked coldly. Tamashii Tenso. Soul transfer, Sora yelled as his chakra enveloped the 3 family members. After about a minute it died down and Hiashi and Hanabi started gasping for air with tears running down their faces. Next time you beat up your daughter or sister, remember the pain you just felt. Because I'm sure you know, she's not weak. Sora said, leaving them there and returning to the stand sitting next to the Hokage seat. The Hyugas were led to a private infirmary room. What did you do? Sarutobi asked. Sora sighed. Something forbidden, but I don't care. I forced them to feel the pain of every strike they ever gave Hinata, as well as the emotional backlash from them. He explained. Most of the clan heads seemed to agree with his punishment actually. Sarutobi nodded and they watched the next fight. Sabaku no Gaara vs Rock Lee. Naruto was being held by Hana, who understood why he reacted so badly. How could family hurt themselves like that? They both looked up as Lee yelled about flames of youth. They turned just in time to see the fabled unbreakable sunset genjutsu. Hana screamed and Naruto jumped into action. Byakurai, 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 Byakurai. About 2 minutes later, and a lot of dodging on Lee and Guy's part, they stopped. Never again, you understand me? Naruto yelled. No genjutsu. Flames of youth are fine. Got it? Both nodded their heads. Guy from behind Sora and Lee from behind Hana. The only 2 safe places. Sarutobi stuck his pipe in his mouth and said, Naruto-kun, please report to my office once these exams are over. Everyone thought he would be fined or something. Well, the Genin and Junin anyways, you have just completed your first S-ranked mission, congrats. Everyone's sweat dropped, while Kakashi just shook Naruto's surprised hand. Gaara stood down in the arena, slightly annoyed and yet fearful at the same time. That genjutsu was scary, but the lightning bolts all over was even scarier than that. When Lee finally started the match, it looked like he wouldn't be able to harm Gaara at all. Until he took of his weights, that is. Man, he was fast. Sora and Naruto noticed the demonic chakra and bloodlust coming from Gaara after Lee used his attack. They weren't going to let him get hurt for something stupid like a match. Naruto looked at Sora, who pointed to himself, at which Naruto nodded and let his Aniki settle things. As the sand wave was about to grab Lee's arm and leg, Lee was suddenly gone. This match is over, control yourself, Gaara. Sora said. He whispered to Lee, I'm sorry I stepped in, but he would have crippled you otherwise. Lee simply nodded, knowing he couldn't have escaped. Gaara was proclaimed the winner, but he spoke up. Why is mother afraid of you? He asked. Sora gave a grin. Dragon's bow to no one hatchling. He replied. Gaara seemed satisfied and the Suna shinobi breathed a sigh of relief. The last match was Dosu vs. Koji. Unfortunately, Choji, while motivated, lost due to crashing into the wall and being unconscious. Sarutobi stood up and gave a big ol' speech about the importance of the exams and how it helps keep the peace while people drew their lots. The final matchups were decided. Naruto vs. Neji. Gaara vs. Shino. Kankuro vs. Sasuke. Shikamaru vs. Tamari. Winner vs. Dosu. Please prepare for the next month and we hope to see you all at the Chunin exam finals. Sarutobi said before dismissing them. He looked at Naruto, who was celebrating with his girlfriend and brother and newfound sister. He smiled brightly. With Sora by your side, Naruto, I know you'll be ready for your father's name.